Good afternoon. I'm here with a colleague of mine who I met on the London Rail course. We met, in fact, probably about 5-6 weeks ago. And I don't know why, but I reached out. I never thought I'd get a response, actually. But I was actually quite impressed with the way that her approach to addictions was outside of the box. I do a bit of work in the clinic with addictions, but I feel that sometimes my experiences fall short. So I'd like to introduce Tani.Bennett, who is actually training. She's going to qualify very soon for a certified health coach for the Institute of Integrated Nutrition. And I'd love to introduce her and ask her to introduce herself in her own words.
Well, hello, Ed. Thanks for having me today. I am Tani.Bennett. As you said, I am in the process of getting my health coaching certification, and I grew up in a home that was affected by addiction and mental illness. So, just here today to maybe talk about some ways that you can help pull yourself up out of the sickness and the ways that the spirit and the mind are affected by growing up in these situations. Just some things that you can do to help yourself that go a little bit beyond the things that are taught in 12-step programs.
Great. So introduce us to the 12-step programs. What is the sort of mainstream approach as far as curing addictions? And you're speaking from an American point of view, but I think the approach with Alcohol Anonymous in this country is very much the same from my understanding. What is the sort of mainstream approach, and where are people pushed into these sort of cattle grids of generic treatments, and what's your experience of that?
Well, my experience has been in the way that addiction is usually treated is most people either go to some type of rehabilitation program, which is normally, minimum 30 days or longer, which can be good for helping, to get the addict out of whatever behavior that they're in. So it's good for the short term because it helps pull them out, but you have to go back to real life, so you have to be able to go back and function in everyday life and figure out how to do that, which can be very hard to do. 12-step programs are very effective. And again, I'm not against 12-step programs. They work wonderfully for some people, but for me, the philosophy in 12-step that you will always be sick, that you will always, if you don't go to meetings, you're not going to be able to function. I guess I just never really bought into that to begin with. And so 12-step, again, it's a great thing. It's a great place. It's a great place of support. They have excellent literature. They go through 12 different steps that, you apply to your life, different things that you need to do to release hurt and pain from your spirit. And again, there are great things that have come from it. But one of the things that I just never really liked that I heard, one of the first things that I heard, and I don't have an issue with addiction, but in growing up in that situation and knowing people who have, hearing that relapse is part of recovery, I just never really quite understood that. Or how that could be hopeful for anybody. But again, there are people who have had success with these programs. I'm not downing them, but I just feel like there are ways and things that you can do to help incorporate healing to your life on a deeper level and maybe get some results a little bit more quickly and help things work a little bit better in your life.
Yeah, and I think that's a great introduction for people perhaps who are on that edge of, do I phone people? Do I not phone people? What is the process? And what sort of I see in the clinic day to day, and I've got a couple of ex-soldiers who come, and it's the same for them, I think, readapting to civilian life again after their military service. I would argue it's the same diagnostics. It's actually giving people hope to say, well, actually, there is something bigger and better out there. There's a series of graduated steps that you can follow. And I think that your approach is getting people out of that 12-step, particularly, thinking outside the box. One of the things we've spoken about recently is the continued support from an accountability point of view. Do you want to sort of give people a breakdown of that, perhaps?
Sure. So basically, having an accountability partner, when you're trying to make major changes in your life, especially when we're talking about childhood trauma, deep spiritual hurts, emotional abuse, things like that. When you're trying to foster a positive mindset and make positive changes, it can be hard to do on your own. I know for myself, for example, there are programs that I have bought and things that I have bought, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm really going to do this. But because there's nobody there to hold me accountable, and they just sit there. They never get done. I've never done them because I have nobody to say, hey, are we going to do this today? Are we going to get it together? So part of what I have put together, and again, this can also be in addition to 12-step, but I feel like with just that alone, it can be very limiting. So what I try to do is encourage people to get an accountability partner, not just one. You can have a couple, but at least to have one, and to have somebody that you meet up with at least once a week, whether it's by phone, in person, video chat, whatever, and just say, hey, sorry, my phone rang through, and just say,
we've got you back.
and just say, hey, this is what we talked about last week that you were working on. How are you doing with that? Okay. And in turn, you'll do the same thing with the other person. Okay. Yeah, this is what we talked about last week. How are you doing with that? What challenges are you facing? Do you think you could use a little bit of more support? Do you need some reminders? Just somebody to kind of help you stay on track with what you're doing and really start to implement those changes.
Yeah, and I think the reason why I reached out to you initially is because I think for some reason you seem to come across really well, and I mean that's a genuine compliment in the sense that you seem to be really invested in people's own improvement of their self-worth and their life. And I think you talk about a lot of that in your videos, getting people thinking about how they can value themselves as an individual. Back to, like you say, with the accountability, I think it's a really powerful message. I only wish that more people were taught this from an early age so that they were able to actually engender this, and maybe that would feed through to the previous generation as well, that our parents' generation, who perhaps didn't, through hardship that we are very fortunate not to have at the moment, they didn't have the emotional support either. And their parents before that, certainly due to particularly adverse circumstances, were not able to give, wanted to. Perhaps, they desperately wanted to provide this, but weren't able to because of circumstances. And you've spoken a lot about forgiveness in your life. And I think that's a message that is hard to resonate with people who haven't done it. And I think your message of having done it and engaged with that is a really important one. So I think your message as well in terms of the fact that 12 steps is a lifestyle is an important message as well, isn't it?
Yes.
So, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Really just so that the idea of it's a continued process of healing in the future that you undertake, and you put it on in the morning like a belt. You get your belt properly. It's got all your tools on it, and you've got control of what goes on there and what you take off. One of your approaches I particularly like is the idea of giving control back to your life. And you mentioned the idea of having set mindsets, particularly at the beginning and at the end of the day. Would you like to run people through your mindset and how you engage with that?
Well, there was a time when I would wake up 5:30, 6 in the morning, because that was before my son would be up. And so I'd wake up and I would meditate and I would write in my journal, and it would just be a few minutes of each. Meditate, pray, write in my journal. And then it's like, I'm set for my day. It's like I'm in a good, positive place. My mindset is in a good, positive place. I've meditated on some good things. I've set out my day, and it's like I'm bulletproof for my day, because of course, you can't control everything. Things are going to happen that are out of your control. But still, it helps you be on a more even and level playing field with how you're going to respond to things when you have that good foundation set for the day. So I used to do that. And I will say from experience, when I got away from it, everything it's topsy-turvy. It went crazy. That balance wasn't there anymore. And so now, after I had my daughter, that's when, I got pregnant and just stuff just kind of went out the window. kind of got back, but I can look back on that time and realize how important it was for me to do that. So now I have not fully gotten back to the point where I'm, sitting and meditating and stuff in the morning, but still, before I open my eyes in the morning, the first thing that I do is I say a little prayer before I get out of bed, and I express gratitude for my day. And I just try to get myself into a positive mindset. And literally, this is something, it doesn't have to be a long, drawn out hour situation. It's literally just something you do for a few minutes,
Absolutely. And I think that's a really important message of giving people control back in their life, things that they can genuinely, I use the tool belt as an idea. You put into your tool belt on the day what you need, and it has that capacity to develop and something that you can always put in there and take out. You don't want it to weigh you down either.
That's
and
right.
You spoke very eloquently when we were speaking previously about how the support structures around you. I wonder, and this is sort of throwing this at you, so who knows what will happen, but the idea of actually those support structures not being an intimate member of your family can be very positive, can't it?
Yes. So you're talking about where I was speaking on when you're looking for support, being careful where you're getting support from in particular.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In particular, making sure these people, perhaps it's a double-edged sword, having a particular deep held relationship with the individual, because you don't want them to fail, like you said, but perhaps that becomes then a limitation.
Yes. So with the support system, the idea behind that is sometimes people who are close to you, they really love you and they care about you and they mean well. Especially when you are maybe specifically in a relationship with someone who is an addict, if you are married to someone, if you have a parent or a child or whomever, the thought process behind someone who really cares about you, their attitude may just be, well, you just need to cut that person off. Well, why don't you just leave? Well, why don't you do this? And they really mean well when they say that, but they're actually hurting you, and it can be making it worse. So I guess the thought behind that is just, when you're looking for support, make sure it's somebody who really truly understands your situation and what you're going through. Somebody who can really be empathetic if it's not something that they've gone through themselves, and somebody who really can truly understand what you need. Just be upfront about what it is that you need from them. Say, hey, this is what's going on. I need to be able to call you at this time. Will you be able to do this? And just be very clear about what it is that you need from them. Because again, growing up with this type of childhood trauma, we tend to have a very hard time asking for what we need and reaching out for help in general. So,
yeah. And I think that's a really important message, that people who are also on the sinking ship do see it differently, potentially as well. And sometimes you do need someone in a lifeboat to go, by the way, did you know this porthole's open, down here? And it sometimes really helps to I know people who've come back from the forces, let's say, and they literally have a Forrest Gump moment. They turn around to the person at the bus stop next to them and they relay things, and the person will listen more often than not. And perhaps, with social distancing, maybe speak a bit louder. But,
right.
So they actually get really good advice from somebody who is not in the bunker with them at the time, in that mentality. So you're organising a Facebook group, aren't you? Would you like to tell people about that?
Well, yes. So with the course that I'm offering, which it's just a 6-week video course, there is, something every week where you can implement a little change. So with that course is access to a private Facebook group for anyone else who takes the course. So this is just a safe space that I've created where you can talk about the things that you need to talk about that come up, where people who have been through this kind of stuff will understand, because it can be hard to understand some of this stuff if you've never been through it before. So again, it would only be people who have taken the course. It would be a very safe space. I will be interactive in there sometimes, but it's a place where I encourage people to talk with one another, maybe find an accountability partner there, and just share the things that need to be shared.
Great. And that's a really important healing step from my perspective as well. Having a space that, I have like a sheet of Ed's written rules that I give out to people from my own experience and everything that I've read. And gosh, from all the grief and loss that we all have in our lives, how I've generally dealt with it, rightly or wrongly, is on the sheet. And one of the things on there is literally jettison cargo that you don't need anymore. So,
Yes.
analogy of the work belt, if it gets too heavy, it becomes something that's going to drown you in times of hardship. So actually, you need to jettison the stuff off. And that's something I think that would really help you with this Facebook group, the ability to put your information out there. People can see and feedback off that. And they can then be inspired. They can inspire other people to follow them as well and to get rid of their baggage, and
Yeah.
take the weight off the shoulders, quite literally in some cases, and
Yeah.
it's a really powerful message. I'd like to ask people actually how they contact you, and I'd like you to maybe tell them so that they can keep this dialogue going and we can get some questions. So what's the best way to contact you?
Sure. The best way to contact me is through my email right now. It is Tani.Bennett, BENNETT.health @gmail.com. And I guess I should go back and spell my first name, which is T as in Tom, A, N as in Nancy, I.Bennett.health @gmail.com.
Fantastic. And obviously you're getting involved with people personally, so they still have that personal touch, which I think is really important, from a psychological perspective in the clinic with me. One of the difficulties is when people come into the clinic, especially men, they struggle to make that bond with somebody. And if it's just a .com, I think people really struggle with that. But if it's actually somebody at the other end of the line that they know is actually genuinely going to take an interest in their story and give them a neutral space of feedback and support, I think they can break out of this cycle. And gosh, do we need that message at the moment, especially
Yes.
long. I think that's been really fascinating. Have I missed anything there you'd like to get the message out to people?
I guess the last thing that I want to say, just kind of in conclusion, is, this isn't about blame. It's not about blaming this on your parents. Like, things that happened when we grew up, they happened when we grew up. They're in the past and they happen. This is about healing. And it's about taking accountability for ourselves in our adult lives and doing the things that we need to do to heal ourselves. And also that it's a difficult process and you have to stick with it. It's not easy. And it takes time. And so you just have to be easy with yourself. You have to be easy with yourself. You have to stick with it. And if you stick with the course, if you stick with the changes and you just take your time, that you will eventually start to see progress.
Yeah. And I think that's the key message, isn't it, here, that you've obviously done that. It's pouring out of you all this experience from your perspective. And I think people need to hear that. And I think the message that there's nothing that they need to pour hate into on this basis. They need to get rid of this. They need to burden themselves of all this tension in the life. From my perspective, it's liver, repressed anger, that sort of thing, which can often drive the addiction as well. So there's so much here, which I think is a very deep subject. We must maybe meet up again at some point, and maybe we can exchange some stories of people who've come out of the woodwork on this. Really
yes. That would be great.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to me, and let me know how you get on.
Wonderful, Ed. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's been really good fun. Thank you very much.